Ladies and gentlemen, hi, my name is Rajan Devadasan, and thank you so much for joining us for this panel discussion on how we may actually try and remain as resilient as possible during this COVID-19 pandemic. You know, it's a topic that is actually relevant to all of us. Um, this global crisis has actually dragged on for far longer than any of us anticipated back in March 2020, when our country, Malaysia, and pretty much the entire world entered a panicked pandemic prison. This afternoon, we have with us three financial experts to help us come to grips with what we can continue to do now more than a year and a half into this truly, truly awful GVC, or Great Virus Crisis. Our panelists today are Muhammad Khairul Daim Ahmad Shamsuri, more commonly known as Daim. Daim is a member of the National Council of the MFPC, or Malaysian Financial Planning Council. He's currently the Associate Director, Sharia, Legal and Secretarial at AIA Public Takaful Berhad. Now, Daim tells me that he is passionate about developing the Islamic finance space with specific emphasis on how a good takaful solution may actually help society. On a far more personal note, Daim enjoys reading in his free time. He tells me that even when he can't find time to do so, to read, he will actually hoard his books. He also supports Manchester United, but having a young family, he would prefer to spend match day playing with his three children rather than watching, say, Cristiano Ronaldo scoring lots of goals. So, Daim, thank you for being here. Our second panelist is Pang Kayu. Pang Kayu is the Vice President of External Relations and Publicity for the MFPC, again, the Malaysian Financial Planning Council. He's also the co-founder and Group Executive Director of Harveston Financial Group and focuses on private client wealth management services. Pang is a self-proclaimed universal football fan, and this means that he passionately supports football beyond all national boundaries. And Pang, thank you for being here. And then we move on to my friend, Rafiq Hidayat Muhammad Ramli. Rafiq is the Vice President of FPAM, or the Financial Planning Association of Malaysia. He's also a practicing licensed financial planner and the Managing Director of Wealth Vantage Advisory Sdn Berhad. Now, when Rafiq isn't working, which I believe is actually not all that often because he is widely perceived as a reluctant workaholic, Rafiq loves to take off traveling around the world, visiting new places and learning about other cultures. Now, before we start chatting, please note that we have a couple of very firm time markers. It's now, based on my time, 2:33, 2:34. Thank you for joining us right at the beginning. And I think as a reward for those who are actually here on time, if you heed what I'm about to tell you, you will actually, I think, benefit. So make a note of this if you're going to be taking down notes. At 3:10, we will attempt to actually stop the conversation and begin to take questions from the audience. And I'll give you instructions on how to do that in a moment, how to put forth your questions. And then that'll run from about 3:10 to maybe 3:23, 3:24. At 3:25, we will end, but there'll actually be a pop quiz. Now, I got to admit, the questions are very, very, very simple. But I would suggest that anytime any of the participants or I actually slow down and emphasize things, we're actually helping you. So make a note of these things. It'll make it easier. So it's only really for those who are here right at the very beginning. So we'll have the pop quiz, and I have some very basic instructions for ways for you to put this through. Okay, now some of you are actually joining us on FB Live and YouTube, and we welcome you. However, only those who are following the session from the official website. The official website is www.isf, as in Invest Smart, ISF 2021.my. I'll say it one more time. www.isf2020.my. Only those who are at that site will be able to pose questions and to participate in the pop quiz. So if you are on FB Live or YouTube, if you got a second device, just get onto isf2020.my, register there so it'll be easier for you to do your stuff. Now, when the session ends, my recommendation is this. Please click on the bottom right-hand corner to participate in the pop quiz. That'll be round about 3:25 or so. Well before that, well before 3:10, as we speak and as you think of questions, please click on the bottom left corner of the screen to pose your questions. Okay, let's get down to some work. We're going to dive straight into our major discussion today, how to remain resilient during this COVID-19 pandemic. Okay, this thing has been going on for such a long time. I obviously don't need to say very much about it. All of us recognize that COVID-19 has changed the way that we live. Now, though, as we move away from semi-isolation to a semblance of normalcy, we all need to make major readjustments. Between now and about 3:10 or so, we're going to be diving into questions that we've jointly prepared. And for the very first one, Pang, I'm going to give you advance warning, okay? For the very first question, which is actually a double barrel question, very long, I'm going to read that double barrel bit, both parts, and then Pang, I'm going to come back to you and I'm going to give the first question so you can dive in, give us your answers there. I'll invite the participants, the other panelists to also do the same, and then we'll move to the second part. But just to give you a sense, ladies and gentlemen, of how we're going to be dealing with this, this is our first extremely long double barrel question. What should people pay attention to in terms of lifestyle enhancements, personal hygiene norms, and even mental exercises to better deal with the changes we'll have to cope with in the coming months as Malaysia attempts once again to reopen its economy and eventually its borders? So, Pang, pay attention. That's the first bit I'd like you to answer. The second part of this question is, our global pandemic has laid bare the rather dismal levels of financial literacy in Malaysia and worldwide. And frankly, this is true both for regular people and inept politicians around the world. So for each of you, I'm giving you advance notice here, what does each of you think are the top two, only give two because we don't have all that much time, the top two personal finance lessons and skills that people need in the decades ahead to improve their financial lives and to better deal with the inevitable crises that will arise in the 2030s, the 2040s, and the 2050s. So that's a lot of stuff. I'm going to go back to the first part. I'm just going to repeat that for those who are joining us. We'll have Pang answer that question, and then I'm going to invite Daim and then Rafiq. So Pang, what should people pay attention to in terms of lifestyle enhancements, personal hygiene norms, and mental exercises to better deal with the changes we'll have to cope with in the coming months as Malaysia attempts to reopen its economy and eventually its borders?
Thank you, Rajan. Thank you, fellow panelists. Thank you, InvestSmart, for giving a chance to MFPC, to share our thoughts and view. I think I got to congratulate everyone, whoever they're able to attend the session. Together with all of us, we look very healthy. The healthiness is come with price. I think we can declare a little victory, but not the end yet. So we managed to overcome so-called catastrophic event in the humankind after the Second World War. I think this is bizarre. I think we are coping up with the from the pandemic to endemic. Now the endemic means we are talking about things are more normalized. The word normalized means what? We want to be back to the normal lifestyle. I think the key words that we want to uphold later on, probably the closing, I want to stress very strongly. We need a lot of positivity, staying positive among all of us, include the community, everyone over the world, And in order to do that, we need to actually balance between life and livelihood. Because when you look at the COVID resilient index ranking, I think at one point we are at the lowest at 53. Last few weeks, thank God, we are climbing up because of the vaccinations and all. That shows that all the initiative is bearing fruits. I think what we need is the cohesive action and awareness and understanding from everyone of us, right? Yard and even the frontliner. And by the way, we got to respect and thankfully for all the contribution from the frontliner that contribute. So to cut the long story short, I would say we actually probably under-expected whatever things that it happens, and come to today environment. I think the number one is it's got to do with what? When we go out, I think the hygiene protocol, the SOP protocol is paramount. All right. And of course, when we want to travel from one point to another, I think our good friend is my Sejatra, like it or not. We got to actually do a bit of homework and find out how many cases, the destinations that we're going to be, encounter, how we're going to actually get ourselves prepared. And most important thing is review our healthcare protection for ourselves and family. I think this is paramount. And the last part is, of course, this is a health crisis. Boosting our immune system is our ultimate goal. I think this is a few points that I think is so important to keep ourselves in the normality, the new normality that we're going to see face. Over to you, Rajan.
Thank you, Pam. Thank you very much. Very briefly, Daim and then Rafiq, just riffing off what Kang said, what do you think are the key things that people need to pay attention to right now as we try and move toward normalcy? Daim?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Moderator, Rajan, fellow panelists, Rafiq and also Pang. Credit to the event organizer, Securities Commission Malaysia, for organizing InvestSmart Virtual Fest 2021. And also to those audience tuning in from YouTube, Facebook, the official channel, hopefully the session will give you some insights in terms of how we can remain resilient during this COVID-19 pandemic. Back to the question from Rajan, my take on this is we don't let our guard loose. Don't let our guard down. Yes, while we are facing away from the pandemic to endemic, celebrating the little bit of victory, we must remain caution in terms of how we live our everyday life. Be it in terms of how we want to, the way we socialize, how we are living our professional life, or eventually how we are managing ourselves financially. So my take to the first barrel of the questions, Rajan, looking at the events that we have seen in the past 1 year or so, since March 2020, I think my take, the first take that I want to share with the audience today is in relation to how we must be able to stay focused on what we need to face, and secondly is in terms of to break the bubble or to break the taboo. You know, we have this Malaysian culture. We used to be in our own bubble, our own cluster. When we face with uncertainty, problems, issues, my advice is seek help, reach out, whether you are in financial trouble, whether you are facing some uncertainty in terms of your health, or you are facing uncertainty in terms of your professional life. So it's really important for you to be able to reach out, seek out help from the professionals, from whoever that is surrounds you, and get help, get advice, and eventually and hopefully that everyone would be able to break through from whatever difficulty, whatever hardness that you are facing. That's the one point on that. So in relation to the second barrel of the question, Rajan, in relation to what are the personal finance lessons, probably I just
Daim, let me just pause you there. Basically, we'll come back to that. I want to just clear all of the first part, otherwise people will have trouble tracking. But thank you, it's very well done. I really loved what you said about making sure that we go beyond our normal, I guess, social bubble and reach out and ask for help. And I think that's actually a key takeaway. It's actually easier said than done. We actually expect, I would imagine hundreds, if not thousands of people to actually be watching this, paying attention. And we hope that the people who truly do need help will actually go out and seek it. One of the key takeaways, I'm emphasizing this, so for those of you who heard my announcement at the beginning, you'll know why. One of the key takeaways here is that to deal not just with this crisis, but also with the crises to come, and whether they come every 5 years or every 10 years, we know for a fact they will come. That's number one. Number two, we also know they will come from a direction that we at this juncture simply cannot predict. Every single crisis is different. But what you want to do is to make sure that you have a holistic financial plan in place. In my own practice, when I talk to my clients, I always say that if you want to put the various things together, you've got to take care of wealth protection, you've got to take care of wealth accumulation, you've got to take care of wealth distribution. So do what you can to close off the cracks and begin to build a complete plan. So thank you very much, Daim. Rafiq, over to you. What should people pay attention to as we make the transition?
Okay, so thanks Rajan, and thanks to the panelists. There's always a benefit of being the third one in the panel, because most of the points has been raised by my esteemed fellow panelists. So usually I can just say, okay, I agree with them, then add on one or two points. But at the same time, I would like to thank Investmat and SC for inviting us to be part of this. And I hope, similar to my panelists, that this would be a fruitful session for everyone. Okay, so I think, like I said, I'm not going to touch much on the first part, because I think most of it has been either said by Pang, Daim, or Rajan. But what I actually agree with what Daim is saying, like, okay, so it's more towards people going and talking to each other, communicating with each other, asking each other like how they're doing and things like that, especially on the mental side, because this particular crisis has shown that partly because all of us were isolated. So we were in our own house, small communities and everything. And from what I've seen, once the government allowed us to go out to social, like people were just like jumping out, like, okay, we need to go out. So then goes back to what Pang was saying with regards to taking care of our SOPs. It's okay to social because it's good for your mental well-being. Okay, it's good for your mental well-being, but please make sure that you take care of your SOPs. Okay, so okay, like I said, Rajan said, I like to travel. Okay, so I am taking the opportunity to travel. Actually, I'm actually traveling tomorrow to Langkawi. But instead of staying at the hotel where I have to spend time with all the other guests and everything, we chose to stay in an Airbnb where we're just our whole family. So we still get to travel, but at the same time, we manage the SOP accordingly. Okay, so that would be my answer to question one. So cool. do it in moderation and take care of yourself. So kita jaga kita lah.
Good. Thank you, Rafiq. Okay, now to each of you again, and we'll do it in the same cycle. We'll do Pang, Daim, and then Rafiq. But we're going to actually do this in very quick bullet points because we have a lot to do, and I want to end our portion at 3:10 so that we can actually hear from the audience. So for each of you, your 2 points don't take more than 30 seconds in total, not each point, but in total. And this is the question. The global pandemic has laid bare the rather dismal levels of financial literacy in Malaysia and worldwide among regular people, and quite frankly, around the vast population of inept politicians that we have. What do you two think, or what do you three think, are the top 2 personal finance lessons and skills that people will need in the decades ahead to get through this crisis and to deal with the crises that we know for a fact will hit us in the 2030s, in the 2040s, and in the 2050s? Pang, over to you. Very quickly, 2 points.
Okay, I think what we have gathered from the ground, from the associations and the feedback, the Malaysian is underestimate this crisis. They thought it's a short one, but it is a very draggy, and God only know when this will end. Probably 2 years and 3 years later. So if you don't build up a good habit in terms of your cash flow management, I think this is the number one issue that we always looking out on expenses, never talk about saving. If you spend first before you save, and that's where we left very little as a reserve. I think this is the lesson that we got to be learned for ourselves. And number two part is, I think after this crisis, everybody realized that what are the things that we cannot live without is our life and our family member, and go on that priority to cascade down what are the must needs based kind of expenses that we got to do our budgeting in the well way. I think I well within the 30 minutes, right?
30 seconds. Okay.
30 seconds, sorry.
Thank you. So basically, it boils down to cash flow management, which actually you can really begin to take care of if you have a budget. And I think all of us would recommend that your budget be written down, not just something that's stuck in your head. So thank you very much, Pang. Dime, over to you. 2 very quick points.
My take on this, firstly, is in relation to how we manage our life priorities financially. Yeah. So we must know what are our priorities, what we must have, what we can live without, or what actually is just embellishment. Actually, it's just a reward to ourselves. So get to know what are our life priorities. As event change, our priorities change. That's the first point. And secondly, I would like to take this in relation to we talk about emergency buffer, cash flow and whatnot. But I would love to also see how individual surplus would be pulled together. The surplus, the wealth that the people have in there would be pulled together to help those in need, whether through an official platform or an unofficial platform. Because I think towards the end, we see this a lot during the pandemic, and I would love to see that how we can take it further, taking the lesson that what we have gone through in 2020 and also 2021.
Thank you very much. Okay, so basically priorities tying in with what Pang said about needs and wants. These things constantly change, but the needs are fairly basic. And then many of us, in general, the crisis has basically made the whole world poorer. But many of us here have been very fortunate, and we continue to maintain surpluses. And it would make sense, I think, for us to actually do a line item budget and say, basically, for my surpluses, I can actually help some people. If you remember the White Flag Initiative, I thought that was fantastic. And my level of respect or lack of respect for the politicians who actually hit out against the white flag, that was just, I think, completely unconscionable. So for the people on the ground who decided, forget about the leaders, we're going to take care of things ourselves. Malaysians taking care of Malaysians, I think, is a much better option. Very good. Rafiq, over to you. 2 things.
Okay. So taking what the other 2 panelists have said, I think one of the financial lessons, or because you're talking about financial literacy in general, because we've been bounded for the past 18 months. So our main mode of communication is social media. So you can see actually a lot of so-called new financial gurus, sifus, etc. coming out of the woodwork. Okay, so the first advice I want to give is basically have some understanding who these people are and why they're giving out those information to you, why they're giving out those advice to you, what's in it for them. So that is what you need to question. That's what you need to question. But I would actually like to applaud SC, because SC has also been active in terms of going after these people. So if you notice, like the update to the watch list has been done more often in the past 18 months compared to before. So I would actually like to applaud that. Okay, so the second part is it's been touched. So you talk about cash flow, you talk about recording and everything. So one thing, whether we like it or not, a lot of us have noticed, which is important, is emergency funding. Okay, so be it your individual family member or your business, those that had emergency funding would be more resilient than those that didn't. Although, like, even if, let's say you say, okay, I had 6 months emergency funding, but the whole thing was 18 months. So, but you would have lasted longer. You would have lasted longer compared to somebody who didn't have. Okay, back to you,
Thank you. Thank you, Rafiq. And actually, you've segued very nicely into the second question, which was from an advisory perspective. And this one, I think I will only address to Rafiq, who's already answered half of it, and then to Pang. From an advisory perspective, what are your essential guidelines with regard to your cushion account, your reserve account, or what we tend to call the EBF, the Emergency Buffer Fund? What are your guidelines, Rafiq?
Okay, so for me, if you are a salary earner, I would recommend at least to have 6 months of your monthly expenses being put aside in emergency funding. Okay. If you are an entrepreneur or somebody who works in the gig economy, or you're a businessman that has a business on the side, so I would suggest to at least have 12 months because your income is not fixed. So you need to take care of it.
So you're using 6-12. Okay, cool. Pang, over to you. What are your guidelines to your clients?
Yeah, I totally agree with what Rafiq has said. Six months for, I think this is the prudent personal finance and all. And for business owner, of course, 12 months and above. And of course, too much will be idle. That probably as an opportunity funding and all. But what I like to stress one more point is like, we have to look at our creditworthiness profile. Because in due time, in the crisis period, when you exhausted your own liquidity or rather your own asset that able to convert into cash, right? That's where it tested your personal profiling and all your credit profiling, whether you can actually within short period of time to go to the bank or to actually get extended sort of loan, personal loan, or even any form of financial assistance in a short period of time to ease off our burden. So I think maintaining a good credit profiling is paramount in our own personal finance. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. I'm going to move fairly quickly because we now have exactly 13 minutes to cover what I would like to do, which is basically another 5 questions. How we're going to do that, I'm not sure, but we're just going to do bullet stuff. And then hopefully we will get our audience members to become invested in what we're talking about, and they will ask us questions of direct relevance to them. So I think this one, Rafiq, Pang, Daim, any of you can just jump in, but answer very quickly, maybe 2 or 3 lines, and that's it. Would each of you be kind enough and frankly transparent enough to share with us real-life anecdotes drawn from your individual professional practices or your companies on how financial planning principles, how guidelines have been of use to your clients or to your customers facing financial difficulties through, let's say, outright business failures, job losses, and more commonly, drops in income? Rafiq, would you like to go first?
Okay, thanks, Arjun, for the question. Okay, so actually, I have 2 parts. I'm just going to answer it real quick. So earlier in the pandemic last year, so the hardest hit sector was travel and tourism. So I actually had 3 clients who lost their income, lost their job, lost their income because the industry wasn't doing well at all. So, and they were let go from their jobs. Okay. However, when they lost their job, they came to me. We checked their financial situation. It was actually not bad because they've already planned it properly. So they had emergency funding. They had other wealth that was put aside for other goals and everything. So they could have lasted as long as they wanted to, even without a job. So this then added on with my previous experience as a HR consultant. So I advised them, so you can go out, get your job, go interviews and everything. And when they give you an offer, you come and discuss with me. Because I said, if they lowball you, you can basically just tell them, okay, take it. I don't want the offer because it wasn't my fault that I lose my job. Normally, in a normal situation, you wouldn't see somebody like me in the market. It's not my fault that because of the pandemic, my industry wasn't doing well and I had to be laid off. And end result, all of them actually had similar or better job offers compared to what they had before they were laid off. Okay,
that's very cool. And it really shows the value of advice. So I think, Rafiq, what we'll do is we'll stop there. For Pang and Daim, remember that question, but I want to actually merge that with another one that I've got. And this ties in. I'm going to be talking a little bit about Charles Darwin and evolution. So hear me out and then riff off what I'm actually going to say. It's very clear, given the spike in suicides, that it's been very, very difficult for all of us. And some people basically are really hurting. So resilience is needed for long-term survival. in a very, very different context, that means not financial context, there is a very common Charles Darwin quotation that is actually, when I did the research, is actually a misquotation because he never said that. Apparently, it was actually a paraphrase by a professor named Leon Megginson in a 1963 article. But let me read that quote to you. According to Darwin's Origin of Species, it is not the most intellectual of the species that survives. It is not the strongest that survives, but the species that survives is the one that is able to best adapt and adjust to the changing environment in which it finds itself. So you can tell the two questions are actually linked. Our advice, collective advice, three panelists and myself, is to prepare, I'm emphasizing this, to prepare for the crises to come, do establish a holistic financial plan. So Rafiq, thank you for your answer. Pang and Daim, anything that you would like to share in this context, how you've been able to help and real examples, just very quickly, maybe 30 seconds each.
Yeah, perhaps I just started first because I've been dealing with some of the business owner market, especially some of the Chinese business owner market, second generation inherited some manufacturing in food processing and all. So they actually very much depend on the middleman to distribute into the restaurant and mini market and whatnot, because the value chain has cut off, so and with a mountain of debts and things like that. So the model here is, the idea here is they need to transform. So with the digitization, I think they able to actually get connected to the e-hailing services and whatnot, and in fact they're able to actually market through the Facebook and whatnot, and to revive some of their business may not be fully. So I think this is some of the area that we need to adapt into a new normality, moving forward, especially for business owner. I think this is very important. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Daim?
That's beautiful. Actually, change is constant in life. So coming from insurance and so takaful background industry, right, where as an industry we pivot, we look back at the strategy, what are the needs of the people out there. So we have seen the industry offering additional coverage, additional protection to their customer, allocating certain amount of money to help the customers. That is so I see the beauty in terms of how the industry face and help the customers out there. And secondly, the pivot and also re-strategize in terms of how we approach our intermediary. We have helped people out there who has lose their job, and of course there are options doing gig economy and whatnot, but there are also opportunity to join in the financial services, become a financial intermediary, earn a reasonable income, at least for them to go through or to weather the pandemic. So I think that's the two sharing that I want to share with everyone.
Yeah, thank you, Daim. Actually, what you said is very, very interesting. And I know that when we did our preliminary sessions, I was trying to get clarification. So just for the benefit of those who are watching, those who are listening, you're basically saying that lots of people have lost their jobs and they need to figure out what needs to be done. And the financial services industry has the capacity to actually help both sides. The consumers, those who have actually built up savings, those who have built up investments, those who have cash value in their insurance. And during a crisis, they actually have something that they can fall back on. That's part of the solution. And the other part that you're also referring to, Daim, is no job, what to do? And I think you didn't mention this here, but we did talk about it during our preliminary discussions. You were talking about pilots who have lost their jobs and then became insurance agents. I remember you said that. And my own practice, I have actually pilots both in the country and outside, and they have been hammered. The external aviation market has actually picked up much better, mainly because the developed world has said enough is enough. We've got the medical facilities. We just have to live with COVID and people have to start flying again. So both in terms of aviation as well as oil and gas, there seems to be a massive pickup because there's a sudden shortage. I have actually received a question. So thank you. We're actually officially going to stop only at 3:10 for that question. But the question that was asked is actually one of our official questions. So I'm going to reserve that time. We can discuss that later because it fits in very well. So we have got a bit of breathing space, and I think this will be very, very helpful to many people. So each of you, hear me out. Again, it's a fairly lengthy question, but it's very, very important because it has to do with retirement. And just to give you a heads up, Daim, I would like to hear your answer first, and then Pang, and then Rafiq. Okay. Through just the ICNA withdrawal program, more than 6 million EPF contributors have withdrawn more than 50 billion. In fact, I think it's more than 60 billion ringgit from that very, very well-run statutory funding body earlier this year. I actually had to do some business I'm based in Seramban. I had to do some business in the Seramban EPF office, and I got to take my hat off. They were super polite. They were very careful. The police were there for SOPs, went in very clean, very clear, very friendly, very fast. So EPF is doing a great job. But when you have a situation where through ICNAR, it's conceivable that by this month, October 2021, we may have maybe 2 million people with only about 100 ringgit left in account one. We have a situation. And so I think I would like us, each of you, to spend a bit of time on the retirement crisis that we are facing. Now, I'm underscoring this. I want you to pay very close attention. When it comes to retirement on a global basis, the greatest challenge that people face is, for those of you taking notes, write this down. The greatest challenge is longevity risk. So beware and be aware. Beware of longevity risk. Be aware of longevity risk. The bottom line is we might, with a very high probability, outlive our retirement funds. And when we have a situation where EPF funds have been massively depleted, 50, 60 billion just in one program, this is my question to each of you. And I don't want you to rush this. I want each of you to take maybe about a minute and a half on this. Clearly, our country faces a staggering current and future retirement funding crisis. What advice would each of you give to help our viewers improve their future financial well-being? And for those who did take their money out, maybe through ICNAR, how can they rectify that situation over the next 3 to 5 years to rehabilitate their weakened retirement funding solutions? Both Rafiq and I are of the same mind. When the ICNAR program was made available, bottom line was, if you don't need to take the money out, please don't. If you have no choice, then yes, take advantage of the moratoria, take advantage of the fact that the money is there. But if you take money out of EPF and you're young enough and you're not about to retire, what's going to happen to your retirement? Now, I've got lots of ideas, but I'm only the moderator. I want to hear from the panelists. So, Daim, how can Malaysians rehabilitate their retirement circumstances?
Yeah, interesting questions. ICNAR, iCitra, all those I's out there, right? Part of the stimulus package. So we have to approach this question. We have to look into the demographic of who actually withdrawn money from their EPF due to ICNAR or iCitra. There are a category of people who basically that is their lifeline. That is their last and final shot to continue living. So probably that is one category. And there are also category of people who would take ICNAR or iCitra, taking advantage of the market, passing that money to some other instrument, fortunately. Or there are also a third category who, when asked, what have you done with your ICNAR, they have no idea what they have done, what have been done with their ICNAR. So meaning that it's money for them to lose. So yeah, exactly. So in relation to that, how should we then compensate? I always believe that, but naturally the economic situation of a person would grow as they build up their career, as they build up their savings. So the advice that I would say is, from now, taking off the lesson what we have seen in the past 1 year or so, I think it's very important that everyone need to equip themselves with the right knowledge associate themselves with the right circle, get the right so-called sifu, as what Rafiq put it, and equip yourself with the right knowledge. You can start with 100 ringgit. We can start with 1,000 and grow that money eventually to compensate or to make do what has been lost for the past few months. Of course, people would lose the cumulative or the compounding effect when they withdraw their money from EPF. But I believe with the right knowledge, and there's also a lot of instruments out there that will help people to compensate what they have lost because of the withdrawal. And of course, we cannot blame people in terms of when they have to make the decision that this is their lifesaver. Of course, there's money gone. But at the end of the day, how you make do or compensate using whatever instruments out there with the right skills, with the right knowledge, and with the right circle, that you will be able to compensate those money that you have lost when you withdraw the EPF. So without going into the specificities of this, the point here is equip yourself with the right financial knowledge. And of course, there's a lot that from Bursa, from Securities Commission, from financial advisors out there that I think Malaysian will go through eventually, and hopefully they can make do or compensate whatever they have lost at the moment.
Thank you very much, Dime. Okay, so what we will do is we'll go on to Pang and then Rafiq in a moment. Each of you, please give us your answers in about 2 minutes, and then we'll move on to the questions from the public. But I think because Dime said something that triggered some thoughts in me, I think it's actually very important for me to emphasize this as we go on. There are going to be ongoing disruptions in our lives, for sure. And therefore, we really need to, I think the term that Dime you used earlier in one of your answers was reprioritize. I really love that. So you want to reprioritize your life goals. It makes sense to go and seek out help from licensed financial planners. What's very important is the word licensed. And you need to be incredibly creative and diligent in seeking out new opportunities. Before I open up to Pang and then Rafiq, my advice to those who have actually taken out money from ICNR is to be very tough on yourself. If you typically have been working maybe a 40 or 45-hour week, for the next 3 years, remember that you're basically in rehabilitation mode. And I would urge you to accept the sad truth that the world has changed. And maybe you need to ramp up to 50 hours a week, 60 hours a week, 70 hours a week. For the really, really motivated, maybe 80, even 90. Do not go beyond 90. Your chances are your heart will fail. But work harder than you've ever worked before. And if you've taken out, let's say, 50,000 ringgit from EPF, know that if you just replace that 50,000, you're still going to end up behind the curve. So whatever amount you took out, whether it's Chitra or Sinar, know that as individual Malaysians, we can put in 60,000 ringgit per year. Work like you've never worked before, and consider putting back into EPF or into your PRS or into any portfolio that you like, 120% of what you took out. So if you took out 50,000, 120 of that is 60,000. In the next 3 years, work extra hard, get that money, pour it back into your portfolio. Okay, Pang, how can Malaysians improve their retirement situation?
Okay, this is a big subject, a serious question. In fact, entire life of us, we always look up for good well-being, good retirement. I think in our life, we're always pressing the calculator button. No present value, no future value, right? So it work to understanding. Our normal calculation means like you don't have the present asset, you don't grow your asset. There are not much asset for you to enjoy. This is the normal linear way of thinking. But in terms of the science aspect, or rather the situation that we are facing, the present value is ourselves. If you don't take care of ourselves, going through the crisis, taking out the money from ICNA or whatever, I think this can be a good result for us to save lives, save our family. There's no tomorrows, basically. So I totally agree with all of us in a sense that we have to look at situation. However, the situation we are facing now is our middle income trap. This is beyond just on a personal level. I think the country is going through transformation after this in terms of economy structure and whatnot. If you are in employment, I urge every one of us review the type of expenses that is not an expenses, it's an investment to ourselves to increase our productivity so that our earning ability will be even better, so that it will become an advanced country. Not the highest income nation. It doesn't have meaning at all if most of the us is always talk about funding and helping the B40 and things like that. So I think literally is talk about first thing, financial education. The other thing that we have to emphasize most is make good use of the vocational training or any form of professional enhancement courses that we can improving our earning ability so that we won't caught into the middle income trap level. So I think extended retirement stage may not be the priority, And
Okay. Thank you, Pang. I need to stop you there.
What you're talking about. Yes, sorry.
I do need to stop you there. Thank you, so that Rafiq has time to answer. And then, Pang, we're going to move on to the first. After that, we're going to move on to the first question from the public, which has to do with the moratorium, which I know you're very passionate about. So I will loop back to you, and you answer moratorium questions first in a while. Rafiq, over to you.
Okay, so thanks, Rajan. Okay, the first thing I want to highlight, so you did mention about having to work extra hours, so 50, 60, 70. And interestingly, okay, so the thing that maybe a lot of people forget is that the income that we get is actually a replacement of the time that we spend. Okay, it's a replacement of the time that we spend. So, and what do we have now during this pandemic and probably moving forward that we didn't have as much before? It's actually time. Actually, we have a lot of time on our hands. So my take on how we need to get out of this is not just to work hard, but also to work smart. So basically, how can we utilize this excess time to help us generate additional income? So be it from having a side hustle, be it from learning about how to manage finances better, in terms of, okay, where do I place my money if I have excess and all that, so that I can then recover the retirement gap that was taken out due to me taking out money from ICNA.
Okay,
or
very good.
iChitra, whatever it is. Yeah, so that would be what I would have to say with regards to that.
Good, thank you very much. Okay, so now it's now 3:18 and the pop quiz starts in 7 minutes. So we've got another 6 minutes. The last question I'm going to ask all of you is basically for your final closing thought. So now what we'll do is we'll go into the public questions. Question 1, are we recommended to opt in for moratoriums or moratoria? What is the advice for that? Pang, I know that you've got plenty to say. So Pang, moratorium answer, what is it?
Okay, I think we started at the wrong footing at MCO1 because MCO1, when Tunku Zafro announced it, it became a compulsory for everyone. Because when you take it in that way, the message is like, the country is helping us, and also we don't have to pay back the loan. This is a very wrong understanding, and even to the extent that when we clarify, they say that there's no penalty on the interest. So there are a lot of confusion in the market, when it comes to that. So when, and of course, like what Rafiq has said earlier on the EPF, ICNA and whatnot, and market is so boom, and people like to just take advantage on the market. There's nothing wrong, but the only thing that we have here is we are not a very disciplined animal. We tend to speculate and not able to actually repay back in 6 months' time and things like that. I think this is what is going on in MCO1 or rather in 2020. So come to MCO2 and 3, I think things are more settled and people would like to actually evaluate. So it's based on application. So when it came based on application, it's not the windfall from the sky. So you got to pay back in due time and you need to apply. All right. So I think on that note itself, you have to look at whether you really require that. If it's a live, reader for you, like It's really the present value, no future value. If you don't clear up your loan, you're going to lose your house. You're not going to actually putting food on the table to the family and whatnot. I think take it, to that extent, revive the family quickly. Use that in a wise way, improving your quality of your family and move on. I think this is a very reality issues that we are facing by all of us. Yeah.
Okay, Pang, thank you. We're going to do two things. We've got another question from the public. I want to roll that question in to the last bit that I want to ask you. Or my own thoughts with regard to the moratorium is only take it if you cannot pay your loans right now.
Yeah.
This is my professional advice. Only take it if you cannot pay your loans right now. Other than that, please do not opt for the moratorium. So for each of you gentlemen, let's start with Rafiq, and then we go to Pang and then Daim in that order. I clearly thank you for your invaluable time because we have to stop in about 3 minutes. Each of you, very briefly, 30 seconds. Is there a brief closing message you would like to leave with our audience today? As you think about your answers, I want to throw out a question from the public. Even before the pandemic, we hear people say, how to plan our finances. There are no finances to plan. We have no money. So as financial planners, how do we respond when we are faced with people saying that? So let's do Rafiq, Pang, and Daim. Rafiq first.
Okay, so I'll answer that question first, then I'll wrap it up. Okay, so how do I plan if I don't have finances? So there's two parts to it. So when you think about planning, right, it's actually about managing your finances. So as long as you have money going in and money going out, there is some form of basic planning that can be done. It might not be as comprehensive as somebody who have more resources, but yes, you can still manage or you can still plan your finances, okay? That's the first part. So second is, I want to just roll back to the point I was saying about getting the right advice. So yes, I know a lot of things are available out there, information is available out there, but really my advice is please question why that advice is given. Even if, let's say, you meet a financial planner, like say me or Rajan or Pang, okay? It's your right to question whatever that
Absolutely.
we say.
Yes.
Okay. Don't take whatever that we say, even though we are certified, we are known to be experts in our area. Don't take whatever that we say at point value. Question why are we asking you to do that? Okay, what's the basis? Okay, so that's the message I want everyone to go home with.
Rafiq, thank you. Pang, I'm really sorry, we're short of time. I'll give you 30 seconds, Daim 30 seconds, and then we're going to say goodbye to the audience so they can go into the pop quiz. Pang.
Okay, I think first and foremost, I just say stay positive. I think this is the mother of all solution. When you stay positive, at least you have an interest to actually make it better. Then, of course, from your revenue, from your earning, you have to relook into what are the worst scenario that you have faced earlier on, and think it over again. If you can survive those days, why can't you survive now? Because we are born with nothing, So I think it's okay to restart our life again. Let's
Absolutely.
celebrate. Yeah, thank you.
And even as you said, we are born with nothing. We're now almost down to nothing, almost no time. Daim, 30 seconds. What's the final thing you'd like to say to everyone?
Thank you. I try to make it short. So first thing, I think you need to take care of yourself, take care of your well-being, take care of your mental health, reach out, seek knowledge, acquire knowledge, learn, relearn, unlearn, along those lines. And in terms of the expenses, financials, cut unnecessary expenses, spend wisely. Thank you. Back to you, Rajan.
Thank you very much. So, gentlemen, it's been a delight. I've learned so much from you. Thank you, Rafiq. Thank you, Pang. Thank you, Daim. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being with us. Just bear in mind that even as you seek out professional help, no financial planner, no financial advisor cares about your money more than you do. So continue to learn, continue to study. The very best investment you can make is in yourself. I wish you all the best. God bless you all.